Hello.
Thank you once again, Jeff, for being here. We really do appreciate it. I had a few questions for you before we take it out to the audience this evening. Before we talk about the film and Sonny Liston, Deborah alluded before the movie in her introduction about you, that you had a varied and eclectic career. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Jeff's work, he made quite a few seminal cult classic movies throughout the 1970s and 1980s, but here we find you in a different mode, working on documentary format about Sonny Liston. So I was just wondering, what brought you to this project that's so different from many of your prior works?
Yeah, well, I've had, Deborah said eclectic, I say schizophrenic. I do what I want to do, and I don't question how it's going to be perceived or anything like that, because I have to be driven. And so I've only done 5 documentaries, maybe 6 in my life, but every one of them I had a specific reason to do it, and like I said before, it's the subject. In the case of Sonny Liston, when I was 10 years old, I went to the Pines Hotel with my parents. It was like the Borscht Belt. And I didn't want to do the camp. I didn't want to do anything. So I wandered down, there was a tent, and there was this big guy hitting the heavy bag, and I never saw anything like this. And that was Sonny Liston. He was training to fight Floyd Patterson. And I used to have huge freckles on my face, right? And I had a cornball like part in my hair. I looked like Howdy Doody. So he and Geraldine were sitting there, and he would do the, 3 minutes night train. The guy would put the needle on the record, and he'd get up, and she says, "Sonny, look at this little boy. He looks just like Howdy Doody." He goes, "Yeah." And he picked me up and put me on his lap. And he says, "Howdy Doody, I want you to stay here. You're good luck." And then he would go and he hit the heavy bag and ripped the eye screw in the plywood, ripped it right out. Now, I never saw a boxer, so I just thought this is what they do. I saw them hold him upside down, hold him by his ankles, and he was just, his arms were at his side, and he was turning his head like this. His entire weight was on his neck, right? Again, I said, wow, this is like something I've never seen, but I didn't know that he's the only guy that could do this stuff. I also smelled scotch. I knew that from my father's friends and all. This is like 10 in the morning. I thought, that's normal, right? And so they didn't have any children, Geraldine and Sonny. They were like, "Where's Howdy Doody? I'm going to come back the next morning." And I would go and Howdy Doody, and I would sit on Sonny's lap between the workout rounds. Cut to forever later, Sonny died and all. I was sad to see that. And I followed him because I saw him on Sunrise Highway in where I lived in Valley Stream on Long Island. We all had our bikes and we stopped at the light and we saw, I didn't know anything about boxing, I saw Floyd Patterson. They had an entourage of cops and everything. And somebody says, "Who's that?" I said, "That's Floyd Patterson. He's going to be fighting Sonny Liston." I said, "He's going to fight Sonny Liston?" I thought of that heavy bag. He's going to get killed. That's what happened. So years later, I kind of felt this is a story that needs to be told, and it's not about boxing. See, I always look for something that you tell. Where does the idea, why is it important? It's not because this specific thing in itself is important, but it's a bigger story. And the way I pitched this to HBO, you ready? I said, "Sonny Liston, the last nigger." That was my pitch. And the reason I said that is because he represented everything that came before him, not just in sports, or all of sports, not just in boxing. And Muhammad Ali was the first black man in sports. So I wanted to do a movie about that. So it transcends boxing. And that's what I did.
You had so many interesting subjects in this film. The person I was most intrigued by your having landed was his wife. Was it hard to find her? And once you did...
Geraldine?
Yeah. Was she a willing participant?
Absolutely.
And is she alive still?
Not now, no.
She's not.
She died not that long ago, 5 years, 4 years. But when we went to St. Louis, I got on a plane, I was living in Los Angeles. And HBO set up all the things. They have so much money. And I went to St. Louis, and the crews, the HBO crew, we do pickup crews. You don't bring the same crew. You can be in St. Louis, they have people. You can be in Vegas, they have the Vegas people. So I'm there, and I see Geraldine, and I said, before we roll the cameras and all, I said, Geraldine, do you remember when Sonny was training for Floyd Patterson? And she looked at me. I said, the Pines Hotel. She said, yes, I remember the Pines Hotel. And I said, do you remember a little white boy that you called Howdy Doody? I do. How do you know that? And I said, because I'm Howdy Doody. And she starts crying, and I start crying. And the crew said, what the
What's
fuck
going on here?
is this? Like, what is this? And she just wanted to go shoot craps on the boat. You know, they have the gambling boat. And we had a great time. So everything she says in this is dead on true because we just, connected after all those years.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
There's so many things we could talk about when it comes to Sonny Liston. There are two pieces that I'd like to delve into with you, and then we're going to take it out to the audience. And I suppose we can use the word murky to describe both. And
Murky?
Murky. And each is explored in your film, and I wanted to get your take. The first,
Get into the murky stuff.
getting into the murky stuff here, whether or not you felt after assembling this film and talking to the various parties who were authorities on the subject, if you will, that Sonny Liston was indeed throwing fights at any point in time in his career, or
Absolutely.
in particular the two Ali
There's
fights.
no question about it, and that's linked into why he was murdered.
Do you think the Ali fights, either one of them were thrown or fixed?
Well, first of all, when you throw a fight, your opponent doesn't know you're throwing a fight.
Right.
That's classic boxing. You throw the fight. If you tell the opponent, this guy's going to take a dive, he's not going to make the thing vaguely credible. He's going to be confused when you're going to go down. So it's only the person who's throwing the fight does the throwing. The Muslims, black Muslims, and the mafia, he was a controlled fighter. Sonny was never, when people say today, well, he's a heavy, Larry Merchant and I had a big argument, because he says, why would anybody give up? At that time, there wasn't 16 belts, there was one. It's the biggest thing in sports. Why would anybody give up the
Right, why would the mafia give
And
up
I said,
the
because
belts?
this guy never felt, he's getting a paycheck from the mob. He never saw the money. Like Geraldine said, if Sonny threw the fight, we never saw any money. She didn't know anything that was going on. When I went to see where Sonny was found dead, it was a house on the golf course in Las Vegas. And who answers the door? Todd Fisher, Carrie Fisher's brother. That's from Eddie Fisher and, what's her name? Debbie Reynolds.
Debbie Reynolds.
He didn't even know that Sonny Liston died there. He says, oh, gross. And then and we got it just in time because he was going to renovate the whole inside. So it was pretty much the way Sonny left the house. The house was on the golf course. Guess who owned the house before Sonny? Sold it to him. Kirk Kerkorian. They gave it to him. Everything is interconnected with Las Vegas and the mob in Chicago. The fact that, and we had a private investigator from Sports Illustrated that knew detailed how Sonny got whacked. Not just an accusation, but detailed where the heroin, the hot shot, he was hit with a hot shot. In Oakland, I had names of very specific stuff. So it wasn't like just a blind accusation. The problem is you're dealing with Time Warner and a guy who's still alive today who did it. And I spent so much time tracking down the story. That's all I cared about. I went to the grave of Sonny Liston. The first day of shooting, I went to Vegas, and there was where the airport, the planes are coming in low, and there's a cemetery. And it says, Sonny Liston, a man. That's all it says. But it had a little urn with a plastic flower. And again, these crews, they don't know me. I pick up the urn, and I look down into the hole, and I said, Sonny, it's howdy doody. Give me a clue. I want to find out who killed you. And I think I know I did.
So you answered the next question I was going to ask, which was, the murkiness surrounding his death. You do indeed think he was killed by somebody. Tell us a little bit, to the extent that you're able to, how you put together a breadcrumb trail to figure out whatever you theorize occurred to Sonny Liston.
A lot of the work was done by a Sports Illustrated guy who was also a private investigator once we were making the documentary. So what I was doing is verifying what he did in a piece in Sports Illustrated. I wasn't breaking new ground. What I was doing new was actually interviewing Las Vegas ex-cops that are retired and just going, dotting all the I's. That's what I did. And I knew I was getting hot on the trail when I started making interviews in Vegas and had a crew, and all of a sudden the chief of police now was supposed to be there at 12 o'clock. He's out to lunch. 1 o'clock, out to lunch. 3 o'clock, out to lunch. When's he coming back? I don't know. He got a phone call. And that started to happen more and more, where the word was out, don't talk to these guys. And I didn't know where the word was coming from, but it can't be good. And so I told HBO, I said, we can't, and basically I said, I'm tracking down to this one guy, and they knew who the guy was. So HBO, the legal department, said, you're Jeff Liberman. You're not like Bill Gates, money-wise. We're Time Warner. Who do you think they're going to go after? This is a guy that's still alive, and he was never charged with this crime. Right? So you make an accusation that he killed Sonny Liston, we're going to have a huge lawsuit. And I said, well, what about when you watch 60 Minutes, they have Idi Amin, and you have Mike Wallace and says, it says that you slaughtered 50,000 people, and he goes, ha, 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 and they're doing that, it's on camera, they're accusing him of it. They said they don't want to go there. And then finally I got a last-minute phone call. It's okay, go and interview him. Now here's a guy, I don't know how much I can tell you, but this guy, on record, was an undercover cop for Las Vegas. He did 3 tours in Vietnam, and he would hold up drug addicts, and say, what are you going to do, call the police? And he would shake them down for the money and the drugs. This is because he did get busted. They did a sting operation, and because of his connections, he did like 3 months. He killed a guy in the back, during, quote, interrogation. A black guy was accused of whatever. He killed him with his bare hands in the back room police station. Got off. So he had connections in Las Vegas. But they said, go and shoot him. So my wife said, I got to check to make sure our insurance is paid up.
Yeah.
And I was so paranoid that I got on a plane. I was living in LA, so it's a short thing. And I rented a car, and I was so paranoid of all the things that were canceled, and that between the mob and the Muslims, these people kill people. They're not, they don't push you around. And I'm thinking, and I stopped and looked, and all these headlights were coming at me. I went on the wrong, when you're getting out of an airport, I saw all these headlights coming at me. I'm going the wrong way. And I did one of those 180s. Well, it was a Jewish 180. It was like a 173, and I didn't get killed. And so the next day I went there, and I went with the crew, and I said, and we went to this like obscure place outside of Vegas. It was like in the desert, and in these warehouses. And he was working as a title company guy. And I said, look, if I don't come out in 15 minutes, come in. My crew, and they say, if you don't come out in 15 minutes, we're getting the hell out of here. Yeah. And I interviewed him. And I complimented his motorcycle. I complimented he had one of these muscle cars. I know a little about it. And it was cool. And I said, why do you think, you must have heard this rumor that you killed Sonny Liston. Where do you think it came from? Like, I'm on your side?
Right.
And he said, I have no idea. I said, did you ever come within, like, let's cut to the chase. You ever come within 10 blocks of Sonny? Most people would say, no,
Sure.
I've never been in the same state. If you tell me you've never been 10 blocks from Sonny Liston, well, as a matter of fact, I was. Really? How? Well, my wife ran the concession at the Aladdin Hotel. That went from like here to the Aladdin Hotel. Is Ash Resnick fronted the Aladdin Hotel for Carbo in Chicago. Boom, boom, boom. It's like, so you ever meet him? Yeah, I met him, shake his hand, and stuff like that. They got the call from Chicago to Ash Resnick. He's shooting off his mouth all over Vegas. That living in that house on the golf course, drinking like a fish, and talking about taking a dive on both those fights. They had no use for him. This can't be good. Whack him. It's that simple.
So going back to that first fight.
Sonny, he knows I'm up.
Going back to that first fight then, what I found so bizarre in the context of the assumption that he threw the fight, that there was this moment in the fight where Ali seemingly lost his vision, and there were allegations that maybe
it was Lieberman.
Sonny Liston was doing something with his gloves, or that his glove man had him put something on the gloves to blind Ali. What do you make of all of that?
That wasn't what it was the liniment they put on Sonny. So Ali's gloves hit Sonny. They can't put something on the opposite.
So you think that was inadvertent?
Yeah, you can't.
And he ultimately just sat down in the corner to throw the fight.
You can never plan to do that. The big thing is that if you want to understand the bigger picture, Sonny Liston didn't look at the heavyweight championship as everybody else, especially the white audience, say this is the biggest thing. To him, all he knew was they gave me a Cadillac. They give me spending money. They give me money to shoot craps. They take my markers. They do. So the fact that he's heavyweight champion, he's just going to get more of that. But he didn't hold it the way you would think.
Right.
He didn't value.
It was a means to a lifestyle.
Right. That's all it was. A means to a lifestyle. That's exactly what it was. So losing the heavyweight championship didn't mean that much to him either.
Right.
So when he's being told by the same guys all his life, Sonny, you do this, break this guy's head, do this, you get paid, it's all for money, he didn't see anything wrong with it. It's like, okay, that's what people can't grasp. And I was trying to get Larry Merchant to understand, because he was using logic. It's not that, you have to put yourself in this guy's position. 26 children, never had anything, and Cadillac and craps money and all that, and money for booze.
It's 20 some odd years later from the time you made this movie. Does it surprise you that nobody in the media, whether in the documentary format or journalists in general or authors, have tried to pick up on the story even further and go
Nick
beyond?
Toshis did a major book on Sonny Liston. He thanked me. It's in the book. And then what's his name? And
It
then
never seems to be something that the mainstream media has.
Well,
I mean, like there was a great New York Times article that I'm sure you read a couple of years ago about the fight in Maine, but it focused mostly on the fight, and there was very little about Sonny Liston's mysterious death.
Well, I mean, who's the editor of New Yorker magazine? Remnick. Remnick he did a radio show. I called him up. He said, oh, the Sonny Liston thing he did a book on Muhammad Ali, and he went through the whole Sonny Liston thing. He drew all this information from this documentary. So it's not like it didn't, but the big thing is that what I just told you about this guy is not in it.
Right.
So people come up to me all the time and say, why didn't you did it, but you didn't go far enough. I couldn't. Somewhere that interview exists on videotape. Oh, and here's the other thing about it. If you want to know about just human nature, I was at a fight. It was James Toney, Roy Jones Jr., super lightweight, and I had the juice from HBO, so I sit ringside. And I go up to get a beer, and as I come down, a hand, and I recognize the tattoos. It was him. Grabs my arm. I said, oh, shit, there's a lot of people here.
Yeah.
And he says, Lieberman, why did you cut me out of the movie?
Oh. Well, isn't that audacious?
He says, I told all my friends. It didn't matter to him that it's in the context of killing Sonny Liston. Right. It's that I told everyone I'm going to be on the HBO.
In the movies, yeah. You better watch your back. Let's take it to the audience. Any questions? The gentleman in the center. We're going to come around with microphones, so if you can just wait till the mic gets to you.
Thanks. I have a couple of questions, if it's okay. How much were fighters paid? Like, so he didn't see any of the money that he made, but at that time period, how much did Muhammad Ali get, win for beating Sonny? Just to give
Well, in those days, if you made like $1 million, say, that would be the top money. And of course, you have to figure inflation. It's a long time ago. But still, it's $1 million. Sonny was a pieced-up fighter. What that means is everybody had a piece of him. So say even if he made $1 million, the pieces, people that own a piece of Sonny Liston would get, say, 70% of every purse. Then they put on training fees and every kind of fee. So he winds up, again, going back to, they don't write him a big check. It's the lifestyle. That there's a big difference. And say, when Don King was screwing over his fighters and all that, he knew what it meant to have a suitcase full of cash instead of a lawyer making some deal that the guy's going to make 20 times as much. It's just a mentality, a street mentality. This is yours. And so he didn't really see, when Geraldine said she didn't see any money, she's not kidding. They didn't live any different after he became champion. They just took care of him.
Did anyone think to track, get Geraldine's permission to track the money, to do any kind of a financial,
No.
No?
Sonny was, because he's Sonny Liston, every fighter in every weight division at that time. It's the same story. Archie Moore. I mean, you name all these guys. They all died broke. Look, Joe Louis. Joe Louis's career, the Brown Bomber, he ended his career shaking hands in the front of a hotel, just exactly like Sonny. It was exactly the thing. They gave him the same job as a greeter at a hotel in Vegas.
We have a question up here. We're going to come to you in the front. We're going to just come over with the mic, and then we'll take the next question toward the back.
As the producer and director of the film, I just want to know what your input, there must have been so much information film-wise in making this film. How much input do you have as a director and a producer in the editing? Because it was an editing film, a beautifully edited film.
Well, you're a director, you just, when you're using footage, HBO would say to me, they didn't like my interviewing technique. They said, you sound like a prosecutor, because they would hear my side that you don't hear when I'm asking people questions, because I have a tendency to go right to the point. But you have total input. I mean, the overall input is HBO. They're making, anything you do for television, the ones that have the final say on everything is them. So, but I didn't feel, other than the Who Killed Sonny Liston part, I never felt that it could have been better. In fact, the shot that Sonny's jumping rope on Ed Sullivan? $10,000 then for that one shot. I said, what do we need it for? Oh, we think it's cool. I said, you're going to pay $10,000? That's when I thought, this is not TV, this is HBO. That's what they paid for that, was Ed Sullivan.
Who did they make the check out?
What's the name of it? There's one guy that owns all the Ed Sullivans. You got it.
I think I saw a hand somewhere toward the middle back there. Yeah.
I had two questions. What was the reason Kirkovian gave the house on the golf course to Sonny Liston? And the second was a little confused if, on the one hand, if Sonny threw that first flight, but he was also out of shape, how does that mesh together?
Wait, he was out of shape? Say that
He
again?
was, you didn't train for the first fight, right?
Yeah, because he had no intention of winning.
Winning, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the whole point of it. That it's such a simple thing for me to understand because I get the mentality of it. Maybe it's because me and Sonny hung out back in the. But I get it. It's not like I'm the champion of the world. It's nothing like that. When he won, you see, he goes, "Well, I'm the champion. You're going to have to live with it." That was his. But I wrote, as far as the house, I really don't know. All I know is pretty weird when I found out that of all people that he could be given the house. He was given that house. He didn't buy it. It was part of the deal for the second fight. I left that out. It's a big thing. Part of his payoff for the second fight was that house on the golf course. The fact that it's Kirk Kerkorian and the fact that maybe he has something to do with the mob, wouldn't you be shocked if he didn't?
We've got another question over here.
I know you can't include everything in a movie. It has a certain limit in terms of time, but there were two things that I thought for sure you would have in the movie. Maybe I missed either of them. One was Ali or Clay would always taunt an opponent, and in this case, he would taunt Liston by calling him the big black bear. I don't think there was a reference to that in the movie. And the other was a scene that I saw on the internet, if it's true, where Ali, or Clay, I should say at the time, and Liston were in a casino, and Clay is taunting Liston. Liston takes out a pistol and starts to shoot it at Ali, at Clay. Clay runs away, and then it turns out to be blanks in the pistol. I was just wondering if...
I don't know anything about that. I heard that it doesn't sound realistic. It doesn't, but the one thing that I did learn when I was doing it and talking to these hardcore guys at the prison system in Vegas is, and this is true for anybody that's been in prison, the only people that hardcore criminals in prison are really afraid of is people who they think are crazy. And it makes sense. So if I have a it's good to know, because if I get, I have to do a 10-year stretch, I'm going to go, and they'll stay away from me. So there was that element that he thought Ali was crazy, because he said it. And that scared him because he was in prison a lot. But other than that, I don't see him, I mean, you know as much as I do, I don't see him doing that. Maybe it was a publicity stunt. Somebody put him up to it. I don't know.
Any final questions this evening? We're going to take that. One more question, last question of the night.
I'm just wondering if there's anyone today that you would compare to Sonny Liston. Anybody you can think of who's...
Fighters?
Anyone, as well, sports figure.
It's a good question. Sports figure. I really don't. I mean, I know, it's funny that when I go out to Los Angeles, I was just there, and I go to the Freddie Roach's boxing in Hollywood. So Manny Pacquiao and all these recent fighters, I hang out with them and see them. But they all got their due. They all made their money, whether they blew the money or not. I can't really find a parallel to Sonny Liston. Now, if you go in the NFL, there's a lot of players that, I just read an article, how many of them are bankrupt they made millions. But it's not the Sonny Liston story. I think it's unique. I can't really name anybody with that kind of, and it's an era, because it really couldn't happen today. I had lunch with Jerry Cooney and Larry Holmes out in Pennsylvania. They're best friends, by the way. All that stuff about racism, I could tell you, that's another Q&A. Larry said, Jerry's got more black people in his family than I do. It's true. Remember how that fight was sold? Black against white, the great white hope. These guys are like this. But they're both well off. Larry's super smart with his money. He owns half of Eastern Pennsylvania. He got screwed over by Don King, but he's a multi-millionaire. So I really don't know if there's any parallel to. It's a tragic story, and it's a tragic story of its time. That's why I said that after it was the black man came after them and were exploited like the Sonny Listons of the world.
Can I ask one last question?
Yes.
Does the mob still control boxing?
No.
No.
The mob doesn't control anything anymore, and the reason is
What a shame.
because the mob, you're talking about mega corporations. If anybody tried to screw with HBO or Time Warner, all of that, I'd hate to be them. It's so much bigger, the money and the pay-per-view and everything, you cannot penetrate that. So it's on the up and up. What's wrong is that, yes, it's on the up and up, but the best guys don't fight the best guys. There's 16 different belts. They all have their own vested interest. So the best guys don't fight the best guys. So if they were all controlled and the best guys fought the best guys, which one is better? It's a good question that you didn't ask.
Do you believe that Muhammad Ali believes that Sonny, basically fell down on his own?
On the second fight?
Yes.
Neil Leifer's famous photo where he's standing there like this, pointing out, you know what he's saying?
Get up.
He's saying, I didn't hit you, sucker, get up.
That's right. That's
So
been
does he know?
documented. Yeah.
That's what he was saying, but they don't put a little balloon over his mouth. That's what he was saying. I did not hit you. Get up. I know Neil Leifer. He was there. He took that picture. Okay, so what more proof do you have to need that the guy? That punch. You have to realize Sonny Liston fought a guy, one of the hardest hitters in the history of heavyweight division was a guy named Cleveland the Cat Williams, right? Cleveland Williams hit Sonny so hard, he knocked him across the ring and broke his jaw, okay? Sonny, I think he might have gone down. He got up. He was pissed. He knocked Cleveland Williams out. They had to take him out on a stretcher. Now, this is the same guy that I saw holding his entire body weight on his head with his neck. You're going to tell me that Muhammad Ali, who was never a puncher, not even close to it, he was an Olympic-style, really good boxer, and he would outpoint the guy. That was his game. Knocked out Sonny Liston with one punch? Please.
And on that note, let's give Jeff a big round of applause. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Jeff,
Thanks
for a
for coming.
wonderful interview. Thank you all. Have a great night.
That was very interesting. Loved it.
Now I'm gonna get close up. Have regard from my daughter, Al.